we are likely to sigh. So today is the beginning. Looking back on today many years later, we are likely to sigh. So today is the beginning of drastic changes. Because a new system may have arrived. In the long river of history, the rise of the new system is always closely followed by the decline of the old system. The decline of the old system means the collapse of the old chain of interests, and it means that new forces can start to fill the vacuum of the old forces, thus arranging their own power. After the collapse of the Eastern Han Dynasty system, Yuan Shao and Cao began to dominate the north. After the collapse of the Sui Dynasty system, Li Yuan and his son began to raise troops from Taiyuan. After the collapse of the British and French colonial systems, the United States and the Soviet Union began to extend their small hands into the Middle East and Africa. This law, ancient, modern, Chinese and foreign, is absolutely inevitable. Today, a new system with China at its core is rising across the Eurasian continent. Let's take a look at what is happening. The loneliness of foreign companies. What is manifested in the outermost layer is the alternation of the old and the new in the brand system. Foreign brands are declining, while domestic brands are rising. In the field of clothing, Adidas' performance in China has declined for 7 consecutive quarters, and its old rival Nike has not fared much better, making a decline of 4 quarters. In stark contrast, ANTA's performance has reached twice that of Adidas, and Step ushered in a round of 37.45% surge. In the automotive sector, sales in the first quarter speak for themselves. BYD overwhelmed Volkswagen, Honda, and Toyota to become China's largest brand in terms of sales. What is more special is the field of beauty and skincare. Estee Lauder, which has been looked at for a long time, began to dive. Sales fell by 12%, and net profit fell by 72%. For such a big setback, Estee Lauder's official explanation is, although the passenger flow in Hainan has exceeded the level of last year, the conversion rate of tourists is low, which has caused retailers to consume inventory faster than expected and reduce replenishment orders. Translate, although there are many tourists in the duty-free shop in Hainan, there are fewer people who buy Estee Lauder. Estee Lauder finally attributed the failure in Asia to the epidemic and corresponding supervision. But the face is that in Asia, Estee Lauder's sales fell by only 1%, but in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa where there is no supervision, Estee Lauder directly fell by 26%. Moreover, China's epidemic control measures have already been relaxed. From January to February 2023, the sales of beauty and skincare products are unprecedentedly booming. The Hainan duty-free shop is showing a crowded trend, and there is no place to go to the toilet. I even asked my friend to bring me a bottle of perfume from there. Everyone just doesn't buy Estee Lauder, that's all. In fact, there are many foreign brands with the same fate as Estee Lauder. They may not have high-end technical content, but their positioning is often relatively high-end, the kind that the poor can't afford. The rich don't like it, but the middle-class people flock to it. But now the situation has changed. People are not spending as much money as before, and the publicity and image of domestic brands have also come up. The good days of foreign brands are coming to an end. In the final analysis, this is a process of disenchantment. A female friend of mine put it bluntly, the quality of domestic brands has caught up now, and they are willing to spend money on marketing. In addition, many calls have been found to be just bad money. Finally, everyone thinks, your foreign brand is just mediocre. The reason for this disenchantment is that the strength of China's manufacturing industry has improved. Another friend of mine is now looking for BYD when he buys a car, and other brands don't work well. Why? Because BYD launched a looking up series of products that everyone looks up to, because BYD's cars are indeed getting more and more beautiful. In fact, it's not just Daisy. The computer he bought recently is also from China-made Shenzhou. In his words, the price/performance ratio beats Alien. When technology and workmanship become more and more excellent, the brand will naturally become high-end, because consumers will make choices. The changes behind the 3 data. The change in brand selection is the most superficial, because this is the end consumers. The front-end changes are actually more profound. The last 3 statistics are quite scary. The first data is the change of China's export data to different countries from January to April this year. For the first time this year, the share of China's exports to countries along the Belt and Road has exceeded the share of exports to the United States, Europe, and Japan. The second data is the cross-border settlement data of RMB. In March this year, the proportion of cross-border settlement in China surpassed that of the US dollar for the first time. The third data is China's surplus and deficit data. From January to April this year, the export volume increased by 10.6% year-on-year, while the import volume only increased by 0.02%. Add one more data, according to Xinhua News Agency, in terms of export products, in the first 4 months, 2023, my country exported 4.44 trillion yuan of mechanical and electrical products, a year-on-year increase of 10.5%, accounting for 57.9% of the total export value. Among them, driven by the export of new energy vehicles, the export of automobiles increased by 120.3% year-on-year. When the four data are combined together, there is a picture. My biggest clients are those Belt and Road countries. The currency I use most is RMB. The category I sell the most is mechanical and electrical products. And what I sell is very high-end. Mainly new energy vehicles and lithium batteries. Overall, I'm now buying less and selling more. To sum it up, a transnational economic system that does not include the United States, does not use the US dollar, and has taken shape. This system is based on the Belt and Road and has China as the core. The RMB is the main currency of this system. China is the main currency in the system. The output is industrial products represented by mechanical and electrical products, and the input is various resources represented by mineral oil. Have you felt the shock of the new system? Without relying on Europe, America, and Japan, we can still live well. And it is best not to rely on Europe, America, and Japan. The situation in Europe and the United States is not very good now. If Europe and the United States are still our major customers, then they will soften, and we will have no way to target them. Fortunately, we have changed. We have turned the countries along the Belt and Road into big customers. It doesn't matter if Europe and the United States are soft. Most importantly, although the nature of customers has changed, the total volume has still increased. In the first quarter of 2023, January-March, exports were 5.65 trillion yuan, an increase of 8.4% over the same period in 2022. In 2019, the figure was 3.77 trillion yuan. Anyway, whose money is not earned? China is filling the vacuum. Now that China's new system has risen, theoretically, there must be a vacuum that has been filled. As for the matter of filling the vacuum, the most typical one is Russia. Since February last year, when Russia's special military operation shocked the world, European and American companies began to collectively withdraw from Russia. The sudden departure of European and American companies has left a huge vacuum in the Russian market. In this case, who will fill the vacuum is a very simple question. There are only a few economic highlands in the world, and Europe and the United States have withdrawn. Could it be that you expect Africa and South America to fill in the holes? So what we see is, according to data from the Ministry of Commerce of China, the bilateral trade volume between China and Russia will reach a record $190.271 billion in 2022, a year-on-year increase of 29.3%. China has been Russia's largest trading partner for 13 consecutive years. In 2022, China's export of mechanical and electrical products to Russia will increase by 9% year-on-year, high-tech products will increase by 51%, and automobiles and parts will increase by 45%. After-sales service of related products has become an important part of China-Russia service trade cooperation. By the end of 2022, the yuan's share in Russia's import settlements has jumped from 4% at the beginning of the year to 23%, and its share in export settlements has soared from 0.5% to 16%. Before the special military operation, the largest mobile phone brand in Russia was Samsung, the second largest was Xiaomi, the third was Apple, and the fourth was Realme, owned by Oppo. But now, Samsung and Apple have basically disappeared from the Russian market, and Xiaomi and Realme have directly swallowed nearly 80% of the market share. The situation in the auto market is similar. Of course, the local Lada in Russia is the best, with its share directly upgraded from 22% to 28%. Chery and Great Wall from China both benefited from 3% of the market share to 6%. Geely also changed from 1% to 3%. The retreat of foreign car companies directly caused the market share of Chinese auto brands in the Russian market to jump from 8% to 17%. In this link, the most tragic ones are the Koreans. Samsung's original share of more than 40% in the Russian market was directly cleared, and Hyundai and Kia's original 23% share in the Russian market was reduced to 19%. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, The Korean predecessors spent decades building up the land, and the younger generations abandoned it like a shoestring, and said no to it. It's really the heart of the poor is not hurt. Moreover, the Koreans have been unfavorable recently, and the export value of almost all categories except auto parts has fallen sharply by double digits. The export of liquid crystal products fell by 62.3%, the export of home appliances fell by 44.7%, the export of wireless communication equipment fell by 53%, and the semiconductor fell by 33.8%. Auto parts are good, and they also fell by 5.3%. After all, what business do you Koreans have to do with the ongoing disputes between Russia and Ukraine? Well now, the Russian market, which took years for Xiaomi and Cherry to win, can now lie down and win. South Korea itself is a country that is extremely dependent on exports. Now that you have given up your business for many years, you really don't know the decision-making mechanism behind this. After decades of developing feelings, I haven't even developed my wisdom. I'd better go back and read Six Kingdoms more. The three new things of the new system. Supporting China's new system is of course China's strong industrial strength, because we are the largest industrial country and almost package the production of most products in the world. Among the vast Chinese manufacturing industry, the most eye-catching ones are the three new products: new energy vehicles, lithium batteries, and solar batteries. Why are these three the most eye-catching? Because I stepped on the pulse of the times. In fact, all countries are now transitioning to new energy sources. After all, the price of oil is here, and the streets of the United States are full of Japanese cars that are famous for their fuel efficiency. Sooner or later, everyone will switch to new energy sources. This is the basic condition for China's three new to rise in the global market. Among them, the most ruthless is the automobile industry. China's new energy vehicles have become the superstar that drives exports, and BID is the well-deserved king. In the first quarter of 2023, China exported 248,000 new energy vehicles, a year-on-year increase of 1.1 times. Among them, the BID family exported 43,000 vehicles, a year-on-year increase of 12.8 times, and it is true that a critical difference. In fact, it is not just BID. Geely's exports also increased by 53% in the first quarter, and the growth rate of new energy exports reached more than 75%. It can be said that the entire Chinese new energy vehicle industry is making efforts. And don't think that this is just a flash in the pan. The issue that BID is more worried about now is capacity. Making cars is not a problem, the problem is whether it can be transported to foreign countries. So BID has built its own fleet very rarely. Guangzhou Shipbuilding International, a subsidiary of China Shipbuilding Group, said that it will have a good start in 2023, and the construction order Group 7,000 vehicle dual-fuel PCTCs, car carriers, has successfully come into force. According to the information on the internet, BID plans to spend $5 billion to build 8 car carriers in the end, 6 of which are basically confirmed to be built, and the remaining 2 will depend on the situation. I really want to give Wang Chuanfu the title of Chuanfu New Energy Electromagnetic Demonstrating Sage and True King. Benefiting from the big win in the auto industry, other industries quickly followed suit, such as lithium batteries and solar cells. In the first quarter of 2023, the export value of lithium batteries was $15.969 billion, with a total of 837 million exported. The amount increased by 79.9% year-on-year, while the quantity decreased by 7.3%. In other words, in 1 year, the average price of a lithium battery has increased by $10. The export of solar cells is also very fierce, although the attention may not be as great as that of lithium batteries. But the quantity is very large. China's solar cell exports exceeded 90 billion yuan in the first quarter, an increase of 23.6%. New energy trams, lithium batteries, solar batteries. These are all products that were born and developed in Europe and the United States, but they all flourished in China. No way, who let us Chinese be best at mass production and cost reduction? International responsibilities of manufacturing powers. After not relying on Europe, the United States and Japan, the main engines of China's exports are several groups including countries along the Belt and Road: ASEAN, Africa, Russia, and Latin America. Of course, the market changes in Russia are still unique. After all, this is an event dominated by political factors. However, changes in markets such as ASEAN are purely a reflection of China's manufacturing influence. Before discussing the influence of China's manufacturing industry, we must first clarify a fact. China's reform and opening up has indeed grown rapidly in strength for so many years. After rapid development, it is impossible for us to do those labor-intensive low-end manufacturing industries anymore, so we will definitely transfer some low-end industries to places where labor is cheaper. Low-end industries will definitely transfer from well-developed areas to less developed areas. This is the basic law of economic development. It is also because of the existence of this law that China's export patterns to ASEAN, Russia, Latin America, and Africa are different. Let's look at ASEAN first. Among the four major regions, ASEAN is the place with the best economic development. The combination of several countries ranks fifth in the world, second only to the United States, China, Japan, and Germany. However, everyone knows the situation in ASEAN. Although the economic scale is large, the level of development is not high and uneven. Singapore's per capita GDP can be compared with that of Western European countries, but countries like Myanmar and Cambodia are basically the same. We can only share a room with players from the African region. In short, ASEAN as a whole is in a state of political stability and far away from war, but the industry is too backward to make money. In fact, Africa and South America are similar, but they are not as rich as the ASEAN bloc. There are so many countries in Africa, many of which are still in a state of warlords, and there is no way to develop their economies. The African countries that trade more with China are basically a few relatively stable countries in contemporary Africa, South Africa, Angola, Nigeria, and so on. Under such circumstances, it would be a joke to expect any industry in these regions to be available. In fact, for the vast majority of developing countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, being able to make money by selling resources is already a big blessing. It is precisely because of the existence of this pattern that China's new system has shown its greater significance. In this new system, China plays the role of an integrator. China imports raw materials from these countries and then exports manufactured products to these countries. It seems to be similar to what Western countries did before, but if you look closely, you will find that China is doing something completely different. In short, China's new system can be called immeasurable merit. Let's look at Vietnam first. Of course, China exported a large number of industrial products to Vietnam, and the Vietnamese mobile phone rankings were basically slaughtered by Chinese brands, but China also exported raw materials to Vietnam. Vietnam has undertaken many labor-intensive industries in China. Nowadays, it is also a big garment-producing country, but Vietnam's industrial foundation is weak, so it still needs to import fabrics from China. China does not simply make scissors through manufactured products. That is too low level. We not only sell you manufactured products, I also sell you raw materials for production. You buy my equipment and raw materials to make money, and after making money, you buy my finished products to enjoy. I make money, and you make money, and everyone has a bright future. Then there is Africa. What we see in the news every day is that China has given loans to XX African countries again, and built railways and reservoirs for others. Many netizens always like to put on a high-ranking posture at this time, and then say sadly, again putting money on the outside. This is the cognitive problem of summer insects can't speak ice. In fact, what is the essential difference between Africa and Vietnam? It's just that Vietnam's infrastructure is okay, so we don't need to repair the airport. Our routine is always, relying on my industrial strength, to provide you with the necessary modern foundation, and then wait for you to grow stronger, and then I will sell you more advanced things. Why is China so keen on helping third world countries? Answer: because we are the largest industrial country in the world, and because we have the largest and most complete industrial system. We help them build infrastructure, and only when their economy develops and the people have money can they come to buy our mobile phones and cars, toys, home appliances. How much does it cost to help them build railways and airports? When these infrastructures are repaired, and when they have money, they will wear Li Ning and Tak, drive Cherry Bid, use Xiaomi Oppo, have Gree Hire at home, and play Tencent NetEase in their hands. How much is this? So if we look at Chinese companies going overseas to different countries, we can see our layup. Those who go to underdeveloped areas in Africa and Latin America have always been infrastructure maniacs such as China Railway, China Construction, and Power Construction, followed by equipment companies such as CRRC, XCMG, and Sany. When your domestic infrastructure is finally complete, and when you start selling ore and agricultural products to make some money, we will start selling you various production lines so that you can upgrade your industry and earn more money, and at the same time sell mobile phones, home appliances, and cars. Let the people who get rich first in your country buy it. China is never afraid of your being rich. What is afraid of is that you are too poor to afford my things. We have mentioned in the article the fantastic journey of Made in China in Afghanistan before. Instant noodles are a high-end delicacy in Afghanistan, and they are good things that are only brought out when visiting relatives and friends and gatherings. The houses of Afghan local tyrants, from tiles to the windows, are imported from China with original packaging. Chinese battery cars have caused a sensation on the streets of Afghanistan. Even second-hand solar panels can be in short supply. In Afghanistan, supporting the rural electricity market in Afghanistan. Being able to cover almost all the product needs of these third world countries from primitive to modern is our ability as the largest manufacturing country. It is our responsibility as the largest manufacturing country to help them develop their economy, let them evolve from primitive to industrialized, and generate demand for higher level commodities. If the land is divided, the strong can keep it. If the wealth is divided, the wise can collect it. Kwanzaa National Storage. Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations, Marx's Das Kapital, and Keynes's General Theory of Money are regarded as the three major works of world economics. However, as early as 2,000 years ago, China had the world's first economics masterpiece, Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa is also one of the few works on economic thought among the pre-Qin scholars. The reason why the economy is called economy is because it contains the ancient people's thoughts of managing the world and helping the people. The book summarizes the experience of Guangzhou assisting Duke Huan of Qi to dominate the hegemony more than 2,000 years ago. Since Kwanzaa is a compilation of speeches from many schools of thought, and because of its age and misrepresentation, Guangzhou's economic thoughts are also scattered in different chapters. But as long as you carefully sort out and summarize, you will find that Guangzhou's economic thought is very systematic, and the discussion of the economic system is not far behind modern economic theory. Reading Kwanzaa, I am often amazed at the wisdom of the ancients, and it is not an exaggeration to sigh a strange book, and even doubt that Guangzhou is a real historical traveler. Not much to say, let's get down to business, and I would like to invite you to read it carefully. Huan Ziming, Wang Qi, and Wang Ziyi wrote the original edition of San Ke Tui character volume in the 37th year of Wan Li. The Foundation of Governance. The article governing the country said, the way to govern the country must first enrich the people. Although the statement is short, it is rich in content. Men represents people-oriented, rich represents the improvement of material living standards, governance represents social stability. Great warehouses no etiquette, food and clothing no honor and disgrace. Behind the governance is actually a double harvest of people's material and spiritual life. Confucius once discussed the same truth. According to the Analects of Confucius, when Confucius went to Weigao, Ranyu drove a car. Confucius sighed, there are so many people. Ranyu asked, the population has indeed reached its peak, what else can we do? Confucius said, the rich. Ranyu asked, and then? Confucius said, teach it. Qing Dynasty Confucius's sacred site map serving Lord Lu Tongzi 13th year Kong Xianlan engraved the most urgent thing for the government is to make the people rich and live long. Define the market. The article Riding a Horse said, the goods in the market are accurate. Therefore, if everything is cheap, you will not get a lot of benefits. If you don't get a lot of benefits, you will get a lot of trouble. If you can get a lot of things, you will use a lot of money. The marketers can know how to control chaos. You can know how much you have, but you can't know how much you have, and you have the right way to do it. The market is a place where commodity prices are formed. It can balance the relationship between supply and demand, restrain the generation of sudden profits, and make prices fluctuate at a reasonable level, so that various needs can be moderately satisfied. Markets by themselves do not produce or reduce goods, but people make production decisions through price signals. A picture of rising the river during the Qingming festival, partial, of the Qing court version, partial, Chenmei, Sunhu, Jingkun, Daihong, Cheng's Haidao. Public-private partnership. Whiteheart said, it is not my way, although it is beneficial, I will not take it. There is no one who does not want to benefit from evil, but the highest state of benefit is to benefit with the world. Light and Heavy B records that Duke Huan of Qi wanted to order the mountain to be cast iron. Guangzhou said, no, If you send criminals, you will easily flee and lose control. If you conscript the people, you will easily accumulate public grievances. If you don't see the benefits of mountains and iron, you will be defeated first. Therefore, it is better to leave it to the people to manage. The people get 10 of them, and the king gets 3. Ming Mountains Emperor Jian Danshu accepting precepts published by Pan Yunduan in the first year of Wan Li. Labor value. 8 views said, the people do not eat without the grain does not grow without the land does not move without the people, and the people do not work without making money. The translation is what William Petty said, labor is the father of wealth, and land is the mother of wealth. Ming Qiuying's 10,000 years of the emperor's Taoism, Haoji taught the people to harvest crops, arboriculture, and 5 grains, and the people were educated when the 5 grains were ripe. Self-interest altruism. The article Luxury mentions that businessmen do not choose their hometowns, and they do not choose their kings. Although they are seeking profit, they can increase national taxation, make goods circulate instead of private possession, and let the poor have jobs. To paraphrase Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations, although the individual pursues his own interest, he is led by an invisible hand to promote an end that is not his own, namely the public good. 20-pound Adam Smith head. Poor divide. Guangzhou also has a deep understanding of the bloodthirsty nature of capital. National Collection says, there are vicious ages, so valleys have high and low, orders have priorities, and old things have importance. Capital will use market price fluctuations to take advantage of people's difficulties and plunder hundreds of times the huge profits. If the land is divided, the strong can keep it. If the wealth is divided, the wise can take it. Under the same capital conditions, the wise can grab high profits, but the fools often can't even get back their capital. If the state fails to regulate in time, wealth will be excessively concentrated, leading to polarization between the rich and the poor, and disrupting the economic balance. Therefore, we should disperse the accumulation and adjust the rich and poor. This also leads to another core idea of Quanzi, the art of weight and severity. The number in the world is all about weight. Quanzi I Kui Du. Severity has a profound impact on the Chinese nation. When Sang Hongyang formulated the national policy for Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty, it was with reference to the theory of weight and severity that he formulated a series of major financial policies such as official operation of salt and iron, equal distribution, equalization, and unified coinage. Its follow-up triggered the famous Salt and Iron Conference in history, which was recorded in Salt and Iron Theory by Hun Quan. Salt and Iron Theory by Huang Quan of the Western Han Dynasty. In fact, Quanzi is also an important basis for the economic reforms of all dynasties. It is mentioned in the book that talking about finances without knowing the importance is nonsense. But if you want to understand the art of slightness and severity, you must first start with the word flow. Flow refers to the circulation of materials, keeping things and controlling the world, which is also the first focus of the art of lightness and heaviness. The state must have unified control over natural resources. Light and heavy armor says, therefore, if you are a king, you can't guard your mountains, forests, lakes, and grasses, and you can't be the king of the world. If capital is allowed to develop resources for personal gain, there will be serious mergers and plundering. Not only are the people impoverished, but capital also threatens the political power, and the situation of one country and 2 kings appears. In the chapter The Number of Land, such an example is given to illustrate the importance of natural resources. The Yellow Emperor once asked Bogao, how can we unite the world into one family? Bajao said, all mountains with ore seedlings should be marked as owned by the state, and private mining is prohibited. Huangdi adopted the suggestion. However, 10 years later, the Jilu and Yanghu mountains were taken over by Qiyu because metal ores were exposed after the flash floods. Qiyu manufactured weapons and had annexation wars with many vassal states. The world was in chaos and corpses were everywhere. Portrait of Shichu in Han Dynasty. Promote extravagant thinking. Strangely, in the book, Guangzhou also advocates frugality. In fact, it is not contradictory in detail. The object of thrift is the state, to control desires and prevent the abuse of people's power. Painted illustrations of the emperors mirror the terrace, Emperor Wenwen of the Han Dynasty. The object of extravagance is the rich, stimulating consumption. Luxury said, there is truth in cheapness, but respect is useless. Develop the leisure industry, advocate collecting treasures, raising pets, beautifying chariots and horses, and having fun, paying attention to packaging effects. Eggs should be carved with flowers before eating, and firewood should be carved with patterns before burning. Advocate thick burials, huge tombs, large coffins, and beautiful tombs. As long as the rich consume extravagantly, the poor and craftsmen can have jobs, and the widowed and old can be supported. Danglu, horse head ornaments, unearthed from the tomb of Hai Hanyu in the Western Han Dynasty. Treasure for imperial use. Mountain Quanzhou records that someone in Baguio dug a big turtle. Guangzhou asked Duke Huan of Qi to send an envoy to the man's home, saying that it was the descendant of the sea god of the East China Sea, and gave him an official position and 100 caddies of gold in exchange. After that, the tortoise was regarded as a priceless treasure, and it was kept on the platform, and 4 live cattle were sacrificed every day. 4 years later, when they conquered the Gaza kingdom, the tortoise was mortgaged to a big family to raise enough rations for the 3 armies for 5 months. Later, Duke Huan established the tribute tortoise system based on this method. Different tortoises set different prices. When the country is in crisis, treasures are given out, and when the country is safe, it is used as an investment object. Hongshan culture jade turtle shell unearthed from the Niu Liang site in Chaoyang, Liaoning. A country of 10,000 vehicles needs tortoise treasures worth 10,000 gold, and a country of 1,000 vehicles needs tortoise treasures worth 1,000 gold. If we delve deeper into the fundamentals behind the tribute tortoise system, it is what Guangzhou emphasized, that we should not allow food and currency to become investment objects. The number of riding horses says, valleys are expensive and cheap. Valleys are heavy and everything is light, and valleys are light and everything is heavy. Shan Zhishu said, coins are heavy but everything is light, and coins are light but everything is heavy. Food dominates people's lives, and currency is the medium of material circulation in the world. If food and currency are accumulated by investors, it will cause social unrest. Qing Dynasty Xiaoping Zhan plowing and weaving atlas entering the warehouse. In addition, there are 2 important concepts in the art of lightness and heaviness. The first is rails, that is, statistics. The country's land, population, demand, currency, etc. must be counted. The other is ling, that is, an order. The king takes orders as the right. If you make sickness, gold is heavy, and if you make su, gold is light. The comprehensive use of the relationship between flow, valley, currency, track, and order is the second focus of the severity technique. Therefore, the way of heaven has more than damage and not enough benefit, but the way of man is not the same, not enough damage but more than service. Who can have more than enough to take and offer to the sky? Only the Taoist. Silk script Lao Tzu A and B. Above we introduced concepts such as flow, valley, currency, rail, order, etc., and then we will see how to use these concepts comprehensively. Shan Zhishu records that Duke Huan of Qi asked Guangzhou how to regulate the economy through currency. Guangzhou replied, first of all, we must count the grain production and prices in all parts of the country, calculate the total amount of money needed and reserve enough money. Then the salaries of the scholars, the fees of the doctors, and the daily expenses of the government were all paid in currency, so that the grain remained in the country and the currency was scattered among the people. In this way, food prices will rise tenfold, while other materials will drop by 20% due to the rise in food prices. Then sign a purchase contract for the materials needed by the country, and pay with food, then the required materials can be prepared in just 1 day. But now, although the government has currency, it is merchants who use currency skillfully and manipulate prices. Warring States G-sword coins. The article Light and Heavy B mentioned that during the Battle of Kyufang, many people had to raise money by borrowing in order to pay military expenses. After the war, Duke Huan wanted to repay the debts of the people, so Guangzhou made a plan. Please order that anyone who holds 100 bonds must donate a horse, and those who have no horses can buy it from the state. In this way, the price of horses will rise by as much as 100 times. The horses originally owned by the state do not need to leave the manger, and the fees received are enough to repay the debts of the people. In addition to being used in internal affairs, the severity technique can also be used in diplomacy. Light and Heavy B said, thus, those who are kind to the country, if the world is under, I will be high, if the world is light, I will be heavy, if the world is many, I will be few. Warring States Jew state wouldn't balance copper ring right. Light and Heavy E recorded the earliest trade war in history. The state of Lu is famous for its silk fabrics, which is why it is said that at the end of the crossbow, it is impossible to wear loose silk. Guangzhou asked Duke Huan and his ministers to take the lead in wearing clothes made of blue jin, and the common people rushed to follow suit. The so-called the king of Chu has a thin waist, and many people starved to death in the palace, so there was a trend in Qi state that took blue jin as the fashion wave. At the same time, Guangzhou also ordered that people from the state of Qi be prohibited from weaving onyx, and must import it from the state of Lu. The price of Lu onyx soared suddenly, and the people of Lu state abandoned farming and weaving onyx one after another. Southern Song Dynasty Liangkai Silkworm Weaving Scroll, partial. When the time was right, Guangzhou asked Huan Gong to wear silk clothes, and ordered to stop the import of Lu onyx and the export of grain. The people of Lu state lost their source of income and could only continue farming. However, food could not be produced in a short period of time, so the price of food soared. The state of Lu spent thousands of jian per grain, while the state of Qi only had 10 jian. A large number of people from the state of Lu began to defect to the state of Qi, so that in the end the entire state of Lu surrendered to the state of Qi. National Storage says, anyone who will be a country can't understand the importance, and can't be a cage to protect the people, can't coordinate the interests of the people, and can't use language to rule. Not only that, if the severity is not clear, it will cause serious consequences. Kuida records that Duke Huan asked Guangzhou, what is inaccurate? Guangzhou said, if all the countries in the world attack us, the people will put down their farm tools and go to war. The time of war is urgent, and the supplies ordered in the morning will be handed over in the evening. The people had to sell food and property at half price to prepare supplies, and the merchants would take the opportunity to buy and stock up vassal states in the early spring and autumn period. When the war is over, the people return to their old jobs, and prices return to pre-war levels. Merchants will sell their hoarded goods and earn less than half of the country's currency into their own hands. In this way, the value of the currency will increase by 3 points, and the price of goods will fall by 3 points. Merchants will continue to buy and sell during the 3-point price fluctuations to make a profit. Every time a neighboring country mobilizes troops, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. The rich enslave the poor, but the country is helpless. This is called inaccurate. Lao Tzu said, therefore, the way of heaven has more damage than benefit, but the way of man is not the same. The damage is not enough, but there is more than enough to give. Who can have more than enough to take and serve to heaven? Only the one who has the way. This is exactly the fundamental reason why Guanzi likes the art of lightness and heaviness. Shang and Zhou Sun divine bird gold jewelry unearthed at Jinsha site in Chengdu. The sun is at midday, the moon is full, the moon is eclipsed, the sky and the earth are full and empty, and the news of the time, how about people, how about ghosts and gods? Finally, here I would like to recommend a notebook with the theme of Chinese traditional culture that we have created over the course of 3 years, Science 100 Schools of Philosophy. We are a small entrepreneurial team obsessed with disseminating classic content. The period of the 100 schools of thought is the Axis era of Chinese civilization. Taoism, Confucianism, legalism, Moism, Bing, Zhonghang, Ming, Xie, and other schools were all established at this time. The central values of the Chinese nation were generally finalized at this stage. Today, it is still subtly affecting all aspects of our daily life. The dream of Chinese revival is ultimately the revival of Chinese culture. This notebook has smelted 50 original works, 81 interpretations, and screened 5,000 ancient paintings, which is the epitome of 3,500 hours of reading. A total of 8 themes and 24 articles explain the essence of various schools of thought in an easy-to-understand manner. Culture is the root, and thought is the soul. Only by truly understanding and practicing can we understand how profound this culture that has been passed down for thousands of years can make the most correct choice at the crossroads of life and the future. In terms of design, the design draft was repeatedly changed 8 times, and the proofing alone was done 5 times. Confucius said, "Gentlemen, then gentlemen." This is also our self-requirement for this notebook. Mao Zedong's economic thought was formed in the Yan'an period, and its practical results were manifested in the self-sufficient economic system of the rural base areas. This system guaranteed the victory of the People's Revolution economically and financially. After the founding of New China, especially from the second half of the 1950s, Mao Zedong's economic thought underwent corresponding changes when facing the goal of modernization. For these changes, we should estimate constraints from 2 aspects. One is the aspect in which he fights against inherent or spontaneous market factors. Another aspect is his struggle against the influence of the foreign Soviet planning system and the experience of Soviet industrialization. 1. Mass movement. During the first five-year plan, 1953 to 1957, Mao Zedong proposed to learn from the Soviet Union. The first five-year plan was once regarded as a program with decisive significance for the struggle to realize the general tasks of the transition period. 1. The Chinese government was extremely cautious in formulating the first five-year plan. It took 4 years to change the draft 5 times. After carefully listening to the opinions of Soviet leaders and experts, 2. It was not until September 1954 that the draft was basically finalized. The first five-year plan was very successful and was completed 1 year ahead of schedule. More importantly, the entire planning system and its management organization were basically established with the completion of the 3 major transformations. The number of working institutions and personnel of the State Council increased from 46 and more than 23,000 in 1954 to 82 and more than 52,000 in 1956, respectively. 3. Among all the five-year plans, the first five-year plan was most influenced by the Soviet Union, especially in terms of industry, especially heavy industry, plan management, finance, and statistics, etc. It was basically copied from the Soviet Union. 4. In this context, from December 1955 to March 1956, when Mao Zedong listened to the work reports of 34 ministries and local governments, he found that the system in which the central government formulates plans and hands them over to various departments, enterprises, and local governments is not conducive to the development of the latter. Enthusiasm for production. For example, the Planning Commission reported that local governments are motivated to develop small businesses, but they are afraid that the central government will not allow them to do so, and that they will be taken away by the central government after the factory is built in a decent manner. 5. There are similar reflections in the light industry and textile industry sectors. These work reports made Mao Zedong doubt whether the first five-year plan, regarded as a successful example, had unleashed or constrained the economic potential. He said, "In the first five-year plan, I was still ignorant about construction. I could only basically copy the Soviet Union's methods, but I always felt dissatisfied and uncomfortable. At that time, I thought that the Soviet Union and China were social. If we are a socialist country, can we do it faster and more? Can we build socialism with more, faster, better and more economical methods?" 6. At the end of the first five-year plan, Mao Zedong published 2 works, on the 10 major relationships and on correcting contradictions among the people. In his view, the problems exposed during this period were directly related to copying the Soviet model. The disadvantages of the Soviet model were bureaucratization and separation from the masses, which was not conducive to mobilizing all positive factors. He advocated giving autonomy to localities and enterprises, giving consideration to the country, the interests of production units and individuals, and that China's construction line, the principle is the same as the Soviet Union, but the method is different, and we have our own set of content. 7. During the second five-year plan, 1958 to 1962, Mao Zedong put forward the idea of using mass movements to promote modernization. Our party has a long tradition of leading mass movements. The socialist transformation was originally planned to be completed in 15 to 20 years, but it actually took only 3 years, which is related to the mass movement carried out by our party with great fanfare. But at the end of the first five-year plan, there was a historic conflict between the tradition of the mass movement and the newly established planning system, which was reflected in the policy differences between anti-rash advancement and promotion or leap forward. Mao Zedong chose the latter. At the second meeting of the 8th National Congress in May 1958, he insisted on including "go all out and strive for the top" into the general line of socialist construction, saying, "These 2 sentences are absolutely necessary." 8 In August of the same year, he at the enlarged meeting of the Baidahe Politburo, the viewpoints of supporting and developing the people's communes were put forward. 1. The people's communes are a spontaneous movement of the masses, bourgeois legal rights. 5. Organizational militarization, action combat, and life collectivization. 6. People's communes start from the countryside first, and then develop into cities. 9. In March 1960, Mao Zedong approved and forwarded the Anjin Municipal Party Committee's report on the Anjin Iron and Steel Constitution. He believes that the Soviet Union's corporate management principles oppose mass movements, oppose the policy of 2 participations, 1 reform, and 3 combinations, oppose politics in command, and only trust a few people to do it coldly. Advocate the one management system and oppose factories under the leadership of the party committee. Long-term responsibility system. 10. Mao Zedong opposed the use of various rules and regulations by the superiors to restrain the hands and feet of the masses. Did he, then, support any initiative of the masses? Nor is it. In the later stage of the second five-year plan, in the process of implementing the central government's 8-character policy of adjusting, consolidating, enriching, and improving, many rural areas across the country implemented household production contracting, which was supported by many cadres. Mao Zedong believed that contracting production to households is a retrogression, reflecting the demands of the backward masses, and said, "We must follow the mass line, but sometimes we cannot completely listen to the masses." 11. Here we need to define Mao Zedong's concept of mass movement, which refers to the collective action of the masses initiated and led by the party. Emphasizing collective action necessarily excludes individual or family-based decentralized activities. In his view, marketization has a disintegrating effect on collective action, because once the contracting of output is done on a household basis, and once you start working on your own, within half a year you can see that the rural class is very divided. Some people are very poor and cannot live. Some people sell land, some buy land, some lend usury, and some marry concubines. 12. On the other hand, mass movement means fighting against bureaucracy and executive orders. Mao Zedong pointed out that using administrative orders to carry out construction and carry out revolution will result in the loss of production reduction. This is because the masses are not mobilized. 13. Stalin once proposed 3 conditions for the establishment of socialism: highly developed productive forces, a single system of ownership by the whole people, and a high level of education. Mao Zedong believed that if there is no political command, no regular rectification campaign, no struggle to gradually abolish bourgeois legal power, no mass movement to develop industry, agriculture, and culture, and no simultaneous development of several, Stalin's 3 prerequisites were not easy to achieve. 14. In his view, party leaders at all levels and cadres should break through the bureaucratic system, integrate directly with the masses, live among them, listen to their voices, and lead. They charged forward. In Mao Zedong's economic thinking, mass movements undoubtedly had a central place. This point is related to his expectation of high speed, and the deeper reason should be understood from the century-old history of humiliation of the entire nation. Mao Zedong's view of history can be summarized as the people's view of history or the view of history of the masses. He believes that the masses of the people are the creators of history and the masters of the country. In order to achieve high speed, mass movement should not only become the basic form of material production, but also directly serve as the fundamental driving force of economic development and social change. 2. Class struggle. Mao Zedong believed that to organize a large-scale mass movement, it is necessary to eradicate the bureaucratic system that suppresses the enthusiasm of the masses, and to prevent the tendency to go it alone, which has a disintegrating effect on the mass movement. The main concept of criticizing and rejecting the connection between bureaucratization at the top and marketization at the bottom is class struggle. In the traditional understanding, class struggle refers to the struggle against the land rich against the bad. If it is expanded a little bit, it will only include the struggle among the people against the national bourgeoisie. The concept of class struggle within the party was first proposed at the Lushan Conference in 1959. At that time, it was limited to the limited purpose of defending the general line of socialist construction. After entering the 1960s, class struggle was gradually defined as anti-revisionism and prevention of revisionism and prevention of capitalist restoration. In December 1964, Mao Zedong pointed out in comments and notes on Chen Zhengrand's report on the situation of social and educational camps that the bureaucratic class and the working class and the poor and lower middle peasants are 2 sharply opposed classes. 15. For a time, the parties, the reference to struggle with production with one hand and class struggle with the other appeared in the document. 16. Regarding the relationship between high speed and revolution, Mao Zedong said, "Why can the industrial revolution in our country be the fastest? The main reason is that our socialist revolution, which revolutionizes the bourgeoisie, has been carried incredibly thoroughly. All superstitions have freed the masses of the people from all kinds of shackles." 17. The concept of those in power taking the capitalist road put forward on the eve of the Cultural Revolution bundled the bureaucracy and revisionism at the top with the spontaneous capitalist tendencies of the masses at the bottom. In fact, there is no direct connection between the two. The case of drastic changes in the Soviet Union shows that bureaucratization has led to the loss of popular support for the CPSU, but it does not in itself mean privatization and marketization. The upheaval is a new choice made by the people after being disappointed with the Communist Party and socialism. The Cultural Revolution did not negate the general line of socialist construction, but its dominant position was replaced by our party's basic line for the entire historical stage of socialism. The production struggle is subordinate to the class struggle, thus forming the guiding principle of grasping the revolution and promoting production for economic work. Grasp the revolution means opposing bureaucratization and marketization, and promoting production means that the masses' enthusiasm for production can only come from political leadership and revolutionary passion. Planning principles. During the second five-year plan, in view of the experience and lessons of China's economic construction, Mao Zedong reflexively studied the socialist political economy of the Soviet Union, and made a study on Stalin's socialist economic problems in the Soviet Union and the official Soviet textbook of socialist political economy. Many important talks and comments. The talks and comments reflected his contradictory and complex views on the planned economy. This is a more difficult aspect of Mao Zedong's economic thought. Although Mao Zedong did not oppose the planning principle in principle, his views on the planning principle were so different from the orthodox Soviet theories that it is difficult for us to simply classify his ideas into the theory of planned economy. Mao Zedong agreed with Stalin's distinction between objective economic laws and subjective planning, but the subjectivity of planning also gave him a theoretical basis for doubting plans, especially when these plans were formulated by the expert technical management class. He believes that the textbook denies surprises and rushing tasks at all, and it is too absolute. The scheduled schedule does not necessarily fully reflect the reality. Everything is mechanically executed according to the scheduled schedule, which will hinder production. 18. Mao Zedong admitted that planning must be based on a strict scientific basis. The question is whether we can grasp the law of planned development, and to what extent we can grasp it, whether we can use this law well, and to what extent we can use it. He doubted the uniqueness and authority of the plan. In a period of time, there can be such a plan, and there can be that plan, there can be these people's plans, and there can be those people's plans. It cannot be said that these plans it's all perfectly regular. 19. The premise of conforming to the law is to exclude human subjective desire and will, which is the inhuman aspect of the planning principle. Mao Zedong was also skeptical about this. Our political command is to increase the consciousness of the residents. Our great leap forward is an attempt to realize this plan or that plan. 20. The introduction of the uncertain factor of ideological consciousness. The plan must not only reflect objective laws, but also be created according to the will of the working class. 21. In his view, neither the Soviet Union's planned economy nor China's first five-year plan had taken into account the overwhelming drive of the masses. Doubts about the plan were also expressed in Mao's vision of economic balance. He believes that as private ownership is eliminated, the economy can be organized in a planned way, so it is possible to consciously grasp and use the objective law that imbalance is absolute and balance is relative. 22. The use of imbalance here seems incomprehensible. Because the essence of planning is to balance or realize the objective requirements of the proportional development of the national economy. Exploiting imbalances can only be rationally interpreted as exploiting the imbalances created by mass movements to accelerate development. Balance and imbalance are thus just another expression for the paired categories plan and mass movement. Starting from the theory of relativity of balance or planning, Mao Zedong believed that it is necessary to always maintain the proportion because of frequent imbalances. Because it is out of proportion, the task of proportionality is proposed. Balanced and unbalanced, proportional and not proportional, this kind of contradictions are constant and always exist, and textbooks do not discuss this point of view. He also said, plans often have to be revised because new imbalances have emerged. 23. It is worth noting that Mao Zedong believed that contradiction itself, rather than its resolution, i.e., balance, was the driving force for the development of things. 24. Contradictory absolutism, in him, is consistent. In the following quotations, the anticipation of planning was discounted by Mao Zedong. Planning is ideology. An ideology becomes a system, which always lags behind the movement of things. Because thought and cognition are the reflection of material movement. 25. Starting from the theory of unbalanced absolutism, or in other words, starting from the mass movement, Mao Zedong believed that a statically balanced plan cannot anticipate or dynamically reflect all possibilities of objective development, because objective development is endlessly driven by absolute contradictions. In order to overcome this disadvantage, the first plan is to reflect the will and wishes of the masses and inspire them. The second is to closely follow the mass movement and solve the proportional imbalance caused by the latter step by step. Normally prepared plans are generally balanced, which is a technical requirement. As for whether it is correct and whether it will be successful, it must be implemented before it can be known. The significance of Mao Zedong's doubts is not reflected in his doubts about plans that have not been implemented, nor in his negation of plans that have been implemented but proved to be inappropriate, but in his suspicion of successful or basically successful plans. The plan is skeptical. He commented on the first 5-year plan as follows: in the past, our plan stipulated that no new industries should be built in the coastal provinces. There was no new construction before 1957, which was a delay of 7 years. Only after 1958 did we begin to build new industries in these provinces. Large-scale construction has achieved rapid development in 2 years. 26. He disagreed with Stalin's judgment that the Soviet Union's plan basically reflected objective laws, and believed that the Soviet Union lacked consumer goods and insufficient agriculture. There is no mass and no politics walk on one leg. 27. This kind of suspicion is doubts about the nature of the plan. He said, history cannot be considered to be created by the planners, not by the people. The plan should serve the mass movement and become a tool for mobilizing the masses. Mass movements can break through planning constraints, break the routine and achieve extraordinary development. The process of formulating and implementing the second 5-year plan provides us with a case for interpreting Mao Zedong's point of view. The second 5-year plan proposal adopted by the 8th National Congress in September 1956 already stipulated a relatively high speed. However, in order to adapt to the situation of the Great Leap Forward, the second meeting of the 8th National Congress in May 1958 actually abandoned the suggestion, and doubled the industrial indicators and increased the agricultural indicators by 20 to 25%. In the next few months, according to the figures reported below, various economic indicators generally doubled. 1959 was a year of declining indicators. The last few years of the second 5-year plan ended with adjustments. These indicators are less like plans and more like instructions or calls that can be changed at any time. Mao Zedong took a tolerant and defensive attitude towards them. 29. One of the drawbacks of the planned economy is the lack of incentives. The way the Soviets solved this problem was to implement material incentives for producers and enterprises, such as profit first and bonuses in command. Mao Zedong opposed it all, thinking that material incentives are important, but not the only principle, let alone a decisive driving force. He divides the principle of material interests into principles, collective and individual, and praises the former while belittling the latter. He also doubts whether the salary system is better than the supply system, worrying that a complete distribution according to work brings individualism. 30. Mao Zedong also emphasized that the national economy must have a unified plan, that is, the whole country is a game of chess. 31. But the unified plan in his mind does not mean that there can only be one plan from top to bottom. This can be seen from his discussion of planning agencies. What are planning agencies? It is the Central Committee, large regions, provinces, municipalities, and autonomous regions, and planning agencies at all levels, not just the Planning Commission and the Economic Commission. 32. At the Hangzhou Conference in 1966, he said, the top is tightly controlled, hindering the development of productive forces, and it is reactionary. The central government is still good for the republic, and only cares about major policies, principles, policies, and plans. Qin Shi Huang centralized power and stagnated. We may not develop for a long time. We may have taken the wrong path. Central planning must be combined with local planning. We must pay attention to the decentralization of power between the central and local governments, and we must not exhaust the resources. 33. Due to the emphasis on local and enterprise autonomy, China's national plan only includes macro-strategic projects, leaving a lot of space for local levels. Governments at all levels can not only have their own plans, but government departments, enterprises, and institutions can also legally locally operated extra budgetary programs as long as they do not disrupt formal programs. A bureaucracy based on the division of labor within the government composed of professional managers is an inevitable requirement of a planned economy. Mao Zedong not only doubted this, but simply denied it. He pointed out that Stalin used to say that technology determines everything, but he didn't see people when he saw things. Later he said that cotters determine everything, He was a man who only saw cadres and not the masses. 34. He believed that the textbook only talked about laborers' enjoyment rights, not their management rights. The management right is the biggest and most fundamental right. Without the management right, Mao Zedong's economic thought was formed in the Yan'an period, and its practice